I think that Doom the Dark Ages is fantastic. I'd say I'm a fan of about 90% of what I've played, but there's about 10% of stuff that I find kind of weird, or sections that are just like a little bit of annoying, or just like slight nitpicks that I have with the game. Remember, these are just my opinions and thoughts on Doom the Dark Ages, after roughly 10 hours. Okay, 10 to 12 hours, I'd say. If you have your own, drop them in the comments. For my first playthrough, I chose to play on Ultra Violence. Not Ultra Nightmare, not whatever the other one is under that, or Nightmare, just Ultra Violence. Just so I could get a feel for the game and all of its mechanics and stuff. I'm currently at chapter 19 out of 22. First, let's start with the 10% I find kind of weird or like a little bit annoying. These are basically nitpicks I have with the game. And the thing that takes up like 8% of that 10% of things that I find weird about Doom the Dark Ages, it's sprinting. Just having a button for sprinting just feels weird. It might just be because I've been playing a lot of Doom 2016 for my Ultra Nightmare playthrough videos, but I've also never really felt that Doom needed to add a sprinting mechanic. Doom has always been a fast-paced shooter when it comes to the character's movements. Especially in 2016 and Eternal, there's a very rapid and fluid sense of movement in the games. Like, there's a good amount of speed when you're moving around an arena in those two games. And you didn't need a button dedicated to sprinting like in other modern shooters. I get why they have it in Dark Ages, because they tried new types of level design which are a lot more open areas, but it just feels weird hitting a sprinting button in a Doom game. It might just be a me thing. It is 100% a me thing, actually. And I know there's an auto sprint setting, but I don't always want to be sprinting when I'm moving around, because it feels like that's just going to throw off some of the stuff in combat. Because I turned it on for a little bit, and the system will literally just auto sprint when you're moving, which I think would kind of throw me off in combat, so I don't really want to use it. Like, having sprint is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just feels weird to me in the context of a Doom game where I don't really think there's been sprinting in Doom. Yes, you can get a good amount of speed in the other games with dashes and stuff, and bunny hops and stuff like that. Just sprinting feels a little weird in Doom. The other thing that takes up like the 2% of that 10% is just certain levels, and like, or not even levels, certain sections in different levels. I find them just like a bit annoying. There's nothing that's like a major problem for me that I found. It's just some of that nitpicky stuff that I don't really like. Like, the water sections in certain levels are kind of annoying and just, they feel pointless to have in there. And then there's the stupid endless hallway where you just have to turn around to get out of it, but there's really no indication. So I just kept running and got nowhere until I figured out to turn around. And like, I don't hate the breakup sections where you're playing in the mech or you're on the dragon. I wouldn't say they're super interesting sections in terms of mechanics, especially, you know, the dragon sections. But I still kind of enjoyed those sections as they just like, they broke up what Doom is. And even if they were a lot slower, they kind of felt a little fun. Not great, but, you know, a little bit of fun. I did like flying around on the dragon. I didn't really care for the combat, but I did like flying around on it. It's small things that aren't bad or kill the enjoyment of the game. It's just a little annoying when you come to those different sections. But I think nearly everything else about Doom the Dark Ages is, like I said, fantastic. And the first thing we gotta talk about, you know what it is. It's the combat. Combat is Doom. It's fast-paced, violent, and insanely fun. The guns hit heavy, but my favorite part about the game's combat is the shield. I think it is the single best addition they have made to the combat in Dark Ages. You can charge into the middle of a group of enemies and kill all the small fries around you. You can throw it and it'll cut through all those same small guys and then embed itself into the larger enemies to stun them or to trigger shield breaks. It's also used as a regular shield to block attacks or parry hell surged attacks. 2016 and Eternal had kind of similar mechanics with like the meat hook and being able to break the shields of enemies. But in Dark Ages, it just feels a lot more refined than it did in those games. Like I said, the shield is my favorite part of Dark Ages combat. The guns are still really good and feel really damn powerful, but I've enjoyed using the shield a lot more because it's a good way to get around the battlefield and to just keep combat fresh instead of just, you know, run up with the super shotty, shoot them, bada bing, bada boom, done. It's like, no, you mix in throwing the shield, running up, hitting them with the super shotty, turning to somebody else, charging into them to go and knock them back, fucking hit them with the super shotty, then go to the next guy and throw your shield again. Like, it's just a really good way for mixing up combat. And the stuff they've added for the different objectives and for enemies in combat, I think it keeps the game really interesting. Like the two different types of leader mechanics. For one, you have to kill a bunch of enemies to knock down their shield bar before you can kill them. Like the stronger the enemies, the more it decreases the bar so that you can get to them quicker. And then the other leader has a flag on their back and you have to kill them, otherwise the other enemies around them are buffed to be stronger and keep respawning. So they take priority in combat and you have to go straight for them to be able to, you know, stop the respawning. It just makes the way you approach combat very different for like each encounter when those enemies are around. Like the combat is just, it is like in 2016 and Eternal, basically like in all of the Doom series. The combat is the main focus and it is great. Like it hits the level that I expect from id and the Doom series. That being said, I do think the level design in the combat areas is kind of boring a lot of the time. I feel like there are so many arenas in the game that are just kind of flat areas. Like, yeah, there's, you know, columns and maybe like a little section where it goes up onto like a slightly higher platform, but it feels like it's very flat for the combat areas. And I think that just comes with them experimenting with more open area levels in general. Like in Doom Eternal, from what I remember, I haven't played it for a while, you have some very vertical arenas or arenas on like multiple islands, I think, that you can jump between, which were interesting to fight in. And even in Doom 2016, you have areas like the Foundries arenas that you need to parkour a little bit to get away from the gore nest, otherwise you'll be trapped there and everything's just going to start shooting at you. And yeah, in those games, there were a lot of flat arenas also, but I think there are also a lot of arenas that have that elevation change in them and have those parkour elements, and just it makes it more interesting to fight in them than I think it is to fight in Doom of the Dark Ages. Like, I don't think it's a detriment to how fun the game is, because it does, even with the flat arenas, you are kind of going fast enough that you don't really notice it. It's just that all of the arenas do feel kind of similar, if like just a little bit different with placement of terrain and stuff like that. And yeah, they all feel kind of similar, but not really in a bad way. Then you have Doom of the Dark Ages story, and I like the story. It's a story just like it should be. Straightforward, and you know, it indicates exactly who you're going to kill. Who is your enemy in this? It's not, you know, some great plot. It's, no, this is bad guy. He wants power. He's going to take power. You must stop him. It is a simple as hell story, but it's effective. Like, I don't think it's a great story if you compare it to like some of the stories that have come out recently, but it's a very Doom style story and it works in the context of Doom. My main complaint about the story is the way they tell it with cutscenes. In 2016 and Eternal, I feel like there were fewer cutscenes but more in-character moments. And the story in those games was told more through the Doomslayer's eyes. Granted, like I said, I haven't played Eternal since right around its release, but from what I remember, I think that's the case. Where you are playing, you have control of the Doomslayer during a lot of cutscenes, and you're seeing through his eyes. But in Dark Ages, it feels like there's a lot of out of character or different perspective cutscenes, which I think is a big departure from how they used to tell their stories. And I don't think it's a bad way they're telling their story. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I liked being in control of the Doomslayer in other games during these moments. Like, compare a moment like this, where this is like this is a big pivotal moment in the story. What if instead of, you're in this camera and, you see the stuff happening off to the side? What if you were looking through the Doomslayer's eyes and you go and you see the ally, you see the enemy, and then you slowly, your head slowly turns so you see the other two enemies over your shoulder? I think that would be a much more powerful cutscene than this. And that's honestly, it's just a personal thing for me. Like, if it's a story beat where the Doomslayer isn't, a part of it, like when the Maker goes and sides with the Demon Prince and basically betrays the Doomslayer and humanity, then yeah, be in the flying camera orbiting that scene, because Doomslayer isn't there. But if he is there, I'd like to keep with that kind of immersion of looking through his eyes at the scene unfolding around him. And as he's straining against power and stuff like that, that's holding him steady. I'd like to see that more than just being an out-of-body experience. Like I said, I do like the story. I'm just not a huge fan of how they're telling it with their cutscenes. It's just a small, personal nitpick I have with the game. The last thing I want to talk about is the game's power ramping. This kind of goes hand in hand with combat. In 2016, you don't feel powerful very quickly. You don't get weapons all that quick, and getting enough points to unlock a gun's true power is really slow. I don't really remember how it is in Doom Eternal. I think it's kind of similar, maybe. But in Dark Ages, the ramp feels really good, actually. It's not excessively fast. You're not two-shotting things by level 5. But as you progress, you do feel like you're getting a lot more powerful, and you are embodying the Doomslayer. And by level 15 or so, you're ripping through fights really fast. Especially if you have super shoddy and shield upgraded a bit, you can just rip through a fight. If you take your time and clear each level, finding all of the gold and jewels and secrets and stuff, you can unlock the skills for your guns, melee weapons, and shield at a really good pace. It makes the game just feel so enjoyable to play with the way that they've done their power ramping. You feel like you are actually the Doomslayer and that you can just fight all of the armies of hell. I'm sure by now you can guess where Doom the Dark Ages is going to land on my ranking system, right? It's landing very high in my I love it category. The combat is insanely fun and fast-paced. The story is good. It's not the best story I've ever played, but it works with how Doom stories have been told. The new mechanics, level designs, and enemies that they added are really fun to use and play with, even if there are some nitpicks that I have with it. There's nothing I honestly hate about Doom the Dark Ages. Like I said, I do have nitpicks with the game, but they're really small. Because there's stuff that feels weird for having sprinting now, and the pacing of some sections and stuff like that, but I can easily overlook all of those weird little things when comparing it to the majority of the game and how much I've been enjoying the majority of the game. And those are my thoughts on Doom the Dark Ages. But like I said earlier, if you have your own thoughts, leave them down in the comments and let's have a conversation about it. I'm not starting my Ultra Nightmare run on this game until I get through both 2016 and Eternal. And I also think Dark Ages might need a few more rules added to it, but we'll wait till I get there to decide on that. If you enjoyed the video, please do all the algorithm stuff, like and subscribe. But most importantly, I hope you have a royal day or night, and I'll talk to you next time.